I'm excited about my new book, Every Day a Friday, How to Be Happier 7 Days a Week.
Joel Osteen's empire was worth $110 million in 2020. Then something happened that changed everything. By 2025, insiders say he lost $60 million in just 5 years. His mega mansion went up for sale. His private jet disappeared. Staff at Lakewood Church started getting laid off quietly. But here's the shocking part. What Joel does for money now isn't preaching. It's something his congregation would never expect. The man who taught millions about prosperity is now desperate, and his secret income source will blow your mind. Joel Osteen was born on March 5, 1963, in Houston, Texas. He was the youngest of 6 children raised in a house where the walls echoed with sermons, prayer, and camera wires. His father, John Osteen, had once been a Southern Baptist preacher, but left the denomination and started something entirely his own. In 1959, when Joel hadn't even been born yet, John converted an old feed store on the edge of Houston into the first Lakewood Church building. It was humble, but on that first day, 90 people showed up. That small crowd became the seed of something massive. John's style wasn't traditional. He brought in charismatic preaching, faith healing, and speaking in tongues. These things were foreign to Baptist traditions, but they stirred people, and the church kept growing. Joel watched this evolution from the front row, not as a preacher's kid just dragged along, but as a boy soaking in the energy of change and the rhythm of faith that seemed to flow with every service. That rhythm was shaken in 1981. Joel was 18 years old when his mother, Dodie Osteen, was told she had metastatic liver cancer. It was already too advanced for treatment. Doctors sent her home with no more options. The air in the house changed. Joel watched his father gather their family and close friends and turn their living room into a prayer room. On December 11, 1981, Dodie said her faith would carry her through. Her body, weakened and fading, somehow recovered. She walked out of that sickness, and the doctors didn't know how to explain it. She lived on. She even wrote a book called Healed of Cancer that became a testimony piece passed around the congregation. Joel helped duplicate those tapes. He watched how that single moment, one declaration of healing, became a spiritual pillar for the family and the church. That story would eventually shape how Joel thought about hope and miracles, and what words could do when spoken with conviction. But Joel's early life wasn't all microphones and miracles. He went to Humble High School and lived a fairly normal teenage life. Sports, friends, casual hobbies. He didn't like public speaking. He didn't want to preach. He liked cameras. He liked editing. He liked the quiet control of storytelling from behind the lens. So while Lakewood grew from 90 members to over 1,000 by the 1970s, Joel was busy learning how to operate equipment. He helped his father launch a weekly television broadcast that slowly expanded until it reached 100 countries. This wasn't a side hobby. Joel was shaping the church's identity on screen, building something that would travel farther than any sermon inside 4 walls. Still, people expected he'd eventually preach. He avoided it. He wasn't called. Not yet. His father's story lingered in the background. John Osteen was born in 1927. He had pastored as a Baptist, but had a spiritual awakening that broke him away. That moment sparked Lakewood. It started in the feed store, but by 1960, the church already had more than 1,000 people. They kept growing. John's TV broadcasts picked up momentum, and people were drawn to his mix of healing messages and prosperity themes. He talked about faith like it could build worlds, heal cancer, and pull people out of poverty. But all of that came with pressure. Joel, still a kid, saw his dad exhausted after sermons, wrestling with balancing leadership and family. The house felt like an extension of the pulpit. Even dinner conversations were laced with ministry debates. Then came the hidden part of their story. Before Dodie, John had been married once before. His first marriage to Emma Jean Schaffer ended in divorce in the early 1950s. Almost no one talked about it. It wasn't something the church broadcasted. In the 1950s, a preacher with a divorce wasn't good for image, so they buried it deep. Joel grew up in a home built on faith, but shaped by silence in some places. That silence taught him about the difference between what people see and what people hide. It would later influence how he carried himself, always smiling, always light, never letting the darkness peek through too much. The family's finances were tight in the early years. The house was modest. Joel watched his dad write book after book, 45 in total. Most were self-published. Sales were low at first, but these books spread John's message far and wide. Joel, still in his teens, was already helping manage the growing media presence. By the time he was 19, he was basically running the TV side of Lakewood. No theological degree, no sermon under his belt, but he knew how to frame a shot, edit a clip, time a sermon break, and track his father's outfits on yellow legal pads to avoid visual repeats. He was building something, not from a pulpit, but from a soundboard. He graduated high school in 1981 and enrolled at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa. He chose radio and TV communications, not theology. He lasted 1 year. The strict religious environment didn't sit right with him. He wanted hands-on learning, not chapel lectures and textbook debates, so he left. He came back to Houston in 1982 and threw himself back into Lakewood's media arm. His father still wanted him to preach. Joel still resisted. He was focused on building Lakewood's first professional TV studio. The budget was small. The equipment was second-hand. He learned everything by doing. While the congregation only saw the polished broadcast, Joel was in the control room, fine-tuning every camera angle, adjusting lights, editing tapes, and making sure his father's words were clear, crisp, and broadcast ready. His efforts worked. By 1984, weekly attendance at Lakewood jumped to 6,600. The church's TV presence exploded. Prosperity preaching mixed with modern visuals. Joel was still in the background, letting others shine, especially his father. Around this time, he started dating Victoria Iloff. She was his confidant, someone he could admit things to. He told her he didn't want to preach, that his place was behind the scenes. They married in 1987, and she stood by him while he kept building the technical foundation of Lakewood. Joel's siblings were taking different paths. Paul became a medical missionary in Africa. Lisa helped him co-write books. Their dinner conversations were often intense, circling around faith, leadership, and expectations. Joel usually stayed quiet. He didn't need the spotlight. His work was in the wires, in the cameras, in the editing room. He wasn't leading prayers. He was stitching together stories. In the summer of 1982, Joel Osteen was just 19 and had only spent a year at Oral Roberts University before quitting. He didn't want to preach, didn't feel called to the pulpit, but he had an idea that wouldn't leave him alone. He told his father, John Osteen, who had founded Lakewood Church, that he wanted to launch a television ministry from scratch. No training, no blueprint, just a rented camera, a borrowed room, and a head full of raw determination. That fall, their first broadcast aired quietly on a local cable access station in Houston, watched by a few hundred households. No lights, no audience, no big expectations. But Joel took every frame seriously. By 1983, without attending seminary or taking the traditional route, Joel had become ordained through Lakewood. He wasn't on stage, but he was learning everything behind it. He edited each episode by hand, directed every angle, and even wrote down what shirts his father wore using yellow-lined notepads so future edits wouldn't jump. For the next 17 years, Joel didn't miss a beat. He edited and directed every broadcast himself, clocking more than 800 hours of polished content by the time the 90s ended. Saturday nights were spent at his father's house, not relaxing, but preparing outfits and picking camera shots for Sunday. By 1987, the Lakewood broadcast aired in 100 countries and was pulling in millions of viewers every week. Joel's quiet grind wasn't just technical. He was building something global, brick by brick, episode by episode, with an obsession few could see and fewer understood. Underneath the lights and camera wires, Joel discovered something troubling by the mid-'80s. Lakewood was barely staying afloat financially. Expenses were piling up and donations weren't keeping pace. John Osteen ran the church with heart, but no real focus on business. So Joel took matters into his own hands, quietly. Without telling his father, he approached Houston area businesses, grocery stores, furniture dealers, even funeral homes, and pitched them deals. They'd get a shout-out on Lakewood's program in exchange for sponsorship money. In just 2 years, Joel tripled the media ministry's income. What was once barely touching $100,000 in 1985 shot up past $300,000 by 1987. That quiet hustle gave the church breathing room. He reinvested it straight into gear, upgrading cameras and lighting, expanding the show's reach. It wasn't ministry as his father knew it, but it worked. Then, in 1987, Joel made a move that stunned everyone. He convinced Lakewood's board to invest in KTBU TV 55, a Houston-based independent television station. This wasn't just funding airtime. Joel used church money to build the station from the ground up. Equipment, cameras, control rooms, the whole operation. It cost over $2 million in 1980s dollars. A massive risk for any church, let alone one still gaining its financial footing. But by 1990, that station was beaming Lakewood services into 10 million homes across the country. Controversial among elders? Yes. But effective? More than anyone could have imagined. By the late 90s, KTBU was syndicating Lakewood nationwide. Joel had quietly taken the church from neighborhood sermons to a media empire without ever stepping into the pulpit. Through the 1990s, Joel's workdays rarely lasted less than 12 hours. He was the editor, the director, the lighting guy, and the quality checker. Every angle, every shadow, every sound mattered. He demanded award-level standards. To him, Lakewood broadcasts had to feel like Monday Night Football or the Oscars. He argued often with staff who didn't match his standards. Cameramen had to be flawless. Sound engineers couldn't miss a beat. He still wouldn't preach. He left that to his father. Joel preferred the shadows, the wires, the editing bay. Then came January 1999. Just days after reluctantly giving his first sermon, Joel's world cracked. His father, John Osteen, died suddenly of a heart attack on January 23rd. He was 77. Joel had only stepped on stage once. That one sermon had come just 6 days before. For years, he had refused to preach. Now, there was no one else. No plan, no fallback. Thousands showed up in mourning, watching this soft-spoken man try to lead while still grieving. The crowd didn't just need a preacher. They needed someone to hold the whole thing together. He didn't jump into it. In fact, Joel offered the position to his siblings first. None accepted. He hesitated, but it was Victoria, his wife, who quietly pushed him forward. On October 3rd, 1999, Joel was officially named senior pastor of Lakewood Church. What he inherited wasn't just a pulpit. It was a $90 million a year institution with international programs, aging infrastructure, and internal doubt. Within months, donations dropped by 20%. The church began to buckle. Joel had to pour in his own money just to keep things stable. There was no applause, no early victory, only pressure, fear, and the quiet weight of something too big to walk away from. He knew things had to change fast, so he shortened the sermons to just 20 minutes. He brought in contemporary music, turning Sunday services into something more upbeat, more accessible. Within a year, weekly attendance jumped from 6,000 to over 10,000. It shocked longtime members. Joel didn't just modernize the content, he made the whole experience smoother, lighter, but still anchored in hope. At the same time, he was still running the media operation, filming, directing, broadcasting. In October 1999, the Joel Osteen TV show officially launched. Within a few months, 2 million people were tuning in. His style was clean, friendly, no fire and brimstone, just a camera, a smile, and a message about rising again. Not everyone supported him. Old staff, who had stood by John's traditional ways, resisted the shift. By mid-1999, the church hit a full-blown financial crisis. The 20% drop in tithes strained the entire operation. Joel had to sell off personal assets just to keep the lights on. A $90 million budget doesn't survive on hope alone. He cut spending, made hard choices, ran emergency fundraising campaigns, and leaned on every media trick he had. Bit by bit, the ship steadied. The same unrelenting focus he had in the editing room was now guiding every decision in the church office. He didn't let up. In 1999, Lakewood Church was still gathering a few thousand people each week. But once Joel Osteen stepped into leadership, the numbers didn't just grow, they exploded. By 2005, weekly attendance hit 15,000. The old building couldn't hold them anymore. So the church made a bold move. They went after the Compact Center, a sports arena that once echoed with the roar of the Houston Rockets fans. After long talks and political back and forth, Lakewood signed a 30-year lease, paying $11.8 million up front. Renovating that massive space into a worship center took nearly $100 million. They added indoor waterfalls, rich seating, and transformed the 6,500-seat arena into a luxurious sanctuary. By the time they moved in July 2005, Lakewood had become the largest church in the United States, setting a new bar for what a megachurch could look like. The cost was enormous. They had to take a $100 million loan from Bank of America, and that wasn't even their first choice of bank. Many had turned them down. But almost 20 years later, something rare happened. On December 31st, 2023, Joel Osteen announced they had finally paid off every dollar. It had taken years of focused tithing. The congregation gave 10% of their income, faithfully, year after year. And despite the debt, the church never stopped its outreach, never scaled down. Osteen stood on stage in January 2024 and said it wasn't about pressure or guilt, it was faith. And it worked. That payoff wasn't just financial. It was a landmark moment in megachurch fundraising history. As they grew, Lakewood made sure they didn't just stay within one community. Osteen focused hard on diversity. He hired a multi-ethnic staff, launched Spanish-language services, and reached out to Latino communities in Houston. By 2010, Lakewood wasn't just local anymore. Their services were being broadcast to 200 million homes across 6 continents. Spanish, English, and other languages carried the same message of positivity across borders. They used everything: Sirius XM, podcasts, global events. It was a new kind of outreach. This wasn't just church on Sunday. It was a worldwide brand. But success came with risks. In 2003, a Lakewood accountant embezzled $200,000. The church was expanding too fast, and its financial systems hadn't kept up. Annual budgets had ballooned to over $90 million by 2017. The embezzlement was uncovered during an audit after they finally brought in external eyes to review their finances. The wake-up call led to tighter controls and compliance checks, but the incident left a stain. It showed how quickly things could spiral if oversight lagged behind the growth. By 2005, Lakewood's annual budget hovered around $90 million. Almost all of it went toward broadcasting, services, and outreach. Joel and Victoria Osteen chose not to take a salary from the church. Instead, they lived off book sales. That detail became a big part of how they pushed back against criticism. People accused them of profiting off religion, but Osteen pointed to his no-salary decision. Still, the questions didn't stop. In 2017 alone, the church collected $83 million in donations. Only $1.2 million went to missions and outreach. The rest kept the machine running: TV, staff, lights, global events. Meanwhile, the Osteens lived in a $12 million riverfront mansion and paid nearly $250,000 in property taxes in 1 year. The contrast raised eyebrows. Then came the books. In 2004, Joel Osteen released his first one, Your Best Life Now. It hit like a rocket. Within a year, it sold over 8 million copies. It didn't just sit on the bestseller list, it dominated it for 2 straight years. By 2014, royalties had crossed $55 million. That book turned him from preacher to global author. It changed the source of his income and opened the door for more. The next one, Become a Better You, pulled in $13 million in royalties and advances. Osteen's words were turning into an empire. By 2011, he had moved on from Simon & Schuster and signed a massive deal with Faith Words, an imprint of Hachette. The next year, I Declare was released. It sold 30,000 copies in just 1 week. His affirmations, short, powerful, prosperity-driven, spoke to people chasing hope. He wasn't just selling books, he was selling momentum, and it worked. His televised sermons promoted the books, and the books brought people back to the sermons. It was a closed loop of media, message, and money. His reach through TV was massive. By 2008, 10 million Americans were watching his sermons every week. He appeared on networks across the globe and filled stadiums with his Night of Hope events. When he held one at Yankee Stadium in 2009, it brought in $300,000 from ticket sales and sponsors. These weren't just church services. They were full-scale productions. Lights, music, message. People paid to attend. It wasn't free worship. It was an experience. And that experience had value. Osteen also took his voice to audio. In 2013, he released Breakout as an audiobook. It was over 9 hours long and quickly became a hit on Audible. It pulled in 1,166 5-star ratings and reached millions of listeners. It wasn't just the words. It was his tone, calm, encouraging, firm. That voice made people feel something, and it wasn't just emotional. Church donations went up 15% after its release. The audio wasn't just an extension, it was a financial driver. But in 2015, another side of the story emerged. A former aide filed a lawsuit claiming Osteen didn't actually write his books. According to the lawsuit, ghostwriters did most of the work. Osteen only gave outlines and themes. The lawsuit specifically pointed to bestsellers like I Declare and Breakout. Critics were quick to pounce. Readers felt misled. In a world where authenticity is currency, ghostwriting brought suspicion. The controversy shed light on a wider practice in the publishing world. Celebrity authors often don't do the writing, but in Joel's case, the optics hurt. His brand was built on personal encouragement. Outsourcing that message cracked the illusion. Joel Osteen met Victoria in the early 1980s while working at his father's church, and by 1987, they were married. For years, they kept a low profile, but that all changed in 2004. That was the year they moved into a $10.5 million mansion tucked inside Houston's River Oaks neighborhood. The estate was nothing short of a palace. Mediterranean style, 17,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a pool, a guest house, and 3 elevators, all stretched across almost 2 acres. People noticed. The headlines didn't focus on the square footage as much as they did on the message. Osteen preached prosperity to millions of people barely getting by, and now he was living in one of the richest zip codes in America. Harris County property records showed they paid around $260,000 a year in taxes, and Joel insisted the mansion wasn't tax exempt. He said it wasn't a parsonage, it was God's blessing. But the house did more than cause a stir. It became a symbol, a signal to other pastors that luxury didn't have to be a secret. If anything, the size of the house matched the size of the audience, and Joel's audience was growing. By 2005, just 1 year later, his wife was in headlines of a different kind. Victoria Osteen was accused of trying to walk out of Houston's Intercontinental Airport with $200 worth of unpaid merchandise. The charge was shoplifting. It didn't stick. Prosecutors dropped the case for lack of evidence, but the court of public opinion didn't move on so fast. News stations ran the story for weeks. Late-night shows took jabs. Joel responded from the pulpit. He didn't just defend her, he spoke about privacy, about faith, about family, but damage was done. His TV ratings dropped 10% as some followers stepped back, wondering how this could happen to a family who preached so much about grace and integrity. He pushed forward anyway. The sermons didn't slow. Victoria stayed by his side, and the family grew with the ministry. By 2003, Victoria had already been named co-pastor. She began hosting women's conferences and publishing books of her own. Their son, Jonathan, born in 1995, started handling video production for Lakewood Church. Their daughter, Alexandra, born in 1998, found a voice in music. By 2010, Joel wasn't just leading a church, he was leading a family operation. Critics didn't like that word. They called it a dynasty. They said it was nepotism. But Lakewood didn't flinch. The messaging stayed the same: faith, family, future. From the pulpit to the production booth, every corner of Lakewood had a family tie, and that wasn't by accident. In 2011, they stirred more debate. This time, it was a vacation home. The Osteens bought a $2.9 million property in Sea Ranch, California. It was quiet, beautiful, far from Houston, and just as controversial. People were still trying to climb out of the 2008 recession. For many, it felt out of touch. For others, it was proof that Joel practiced what he preached. He said prosperity wasn't something to hide. It was part of the message. If you believed hard enough, gave generously, lived righteously, blessings would follow. For him, this was a blessing. But for critics, it crossed a line. Scholars called it dangerous theology. Watchdogs called it misleading. The mansion, the vacation home, the jet setting, all became part of the same conversation. Joel kept going. He kept smiling. He kept saying God had been good to him. By 2015, estimates placed his net worth at $50 million. But with money came more pressure. In 2017, when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, the city watched and waited to see what Lakewood Church would do. At first, the doors stayed closed. The backlash was immediate. Why wasn't the biggest church in Houston helping people who had lost everything? Joel gave his reason: insurance, liability, logistics. Then the church opened. Joel donated $1 million of his own money and launched a volunteer network that helped rebuild homes and deliver supplies. The criticism didn't vanish, but it softened. He framed the moment as a test, faith in action, pain into purpose. But money kept following him. In 2020, Lakewood Church took a $4.4 million PPP loan from the government, meant to support small businesses hit hard by the pandemic. The church had 368 employees, which technically qualified, but the public wasn't convinced. By then, Joel's personal net worth was $100 million. Photos of his Ferrari and mansion started circulating again. People remembered how slow the church had been to open during Harvey. The backlash hit hard. 1 year later, in October 2021, Lakewood repaid the full $4.4 million. They said the money only went to staff salaries, not personal gain. The message was clear, but the debate didn't stop. It never really did. That same year, 2021, whispers turned into headlines. The IRS had spent years quietly tracking prosperity preachers, and Joel Osteen was near the top of the list. An audit traced back to 2007 revealed $89 million in media income had been routed through personal channels. It didn't mean illegal, but it did mean complicated. Joel's message, wealth as divine favor, wasn't just unpopular with critics anymore. It was drawing legal attention. Most churches were rarely audited. Joel's wasn't like most. It was massive, televised, and flush with royalties. People called it heresy, said it was consumerism disguised as scripture. Joel didn't flinch. He stayed on message. Give generously, live faithfully, expect blessings. Then came February 11th, 2024. Lakewood Church was mid-service, in Spanish, when a woman walked in with an AR-15 and opened fire. Her name was Janessa Yvonne Moreno, 36 years old. A 57-year-old man and a 7-year-old boy were both hit and critically injured. Moreno was acting alone, with a history of mental health issues. The chaos was caught on police body cams. Within minutes, the incident was national news. Joel Osteen appeared somber. He preached forgiveness. He asked for prayer. But security questions quickly followed. Lakewood had the budget. Why hadn't they done more? The church responded with a $500,000 investment in upgraded protection. But the trauma stayed. A place meant for healing had become a crime scene. The congregation mourned. The questions didn't stop. Around the same time, a rumor exploded. It claimed Joel Osteen had lost $60 million in the pandemic. The story spread fast. But it wasn't true. Financial analysts ran the numbers. His book sales hadn't dipped. His speaking fees were steady. In fact, by 2025, his net worth had climbed to $110 million. His books, like Your Best Life Now and Next Level Thinking, sold over 10 million copies globally. His podcast had more than 6 million downloads a year. He didn't take a salary from Lakewood. He made his money from publishing deals, media rights, and live events. The $60 million loss headline turned out to be clickbait. Joel's wealth hadn't dropped. It had grown. At 62, Joel Osteen was still standing at the front of Lakewood Church, preaching to over 50,000 people a week. Back in 1999, when he first stepped up after his father's death, the crowd was just 6,000. Now it was the largest single-site congregation in the U.S., possibly the world. His weekly TV broadcast, Joel Osteen Overflow with Hope, reached 200 million homes across 100 countries. His influence was digital now. Books, podcasts, live streams. His voice had gone global, but even empires have milestones. In 2024, Lakewood Church paid off its $100 million renovation loan to Bank of America. Joel announced it with tears in his eyes. The church was debt-free. For 20 years, they'd chipped away at it. Even after being rejected by other banks, they had spent hundreds of millions on global outreach without missing a payment. Critics called it a myth. They said the church was drowning in debt. But that moment proved otherwise. They owned their building, they cleared the books, and Joel stood there smiling, not just because of the numbers, but because of what it meant to the people who gave.